Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. In this video, we will be discussing about the software development life cycle models, and we will be discussing about Agile model in particular. Now, in earlier days, iterative waterfall model was very popular to complete a project, but nowadays the developers face serious problems while using it to develop the software. The primary problems associated with the iterative waterfall model is, let me note it down as difficulties. So the difficulties faced may be, we have already discussed about the disadvantages, but certain difficulties which includes handling of change request. So if we are considering handling of change request or the change of decision of the customers, it becomes a real challenge when it comes to the developers. So during project development, it is really difficult to handle the change request, and also we cannot the requirements have to be well known. So the requirements have to be well known in advance. So this is one criteria or disadvantage which is associated with the iterative waterfall model or the waterfall model, due to which the developers do not prefer to use this type of models. Now, to overcome these drawbacks, in the mid 1990s, the Agile software development model was proposed. So if we are considering the Agile development, so Agile basically was developed in the mid 1990s. So mid 1990 gave rise to the development of Agile SDLC in order to develop different projects. Now, this Agile model was primarily designed to help a project to adapt to change requests. So we could actually address different types of change requests during the project development course. So adapt different types of change request, and also we could develop a system or a project very fast. The main aim of this agile model was to facilitate quick project completion. So how does it facilitate quick project completion? Because it helps us to address any type of change request at any point of the project development. Hence, we do not have to wait until the entire project is over in order to identify any type of changes, and we can simply go ahead with the development of the project. Now, to accomplish this task, agility was required in order to handle the change request or quickly complete the project in the well-defined time. This agility is basically achieved by fitting the process to the project and removing activities which may not be essential for the specific project. So identification of critical activities was one primary feature of this agile SDLC, and these critical features would be helpful in order to complete the task in a well-defined manner well ahead on time. So identification of critical activities played a big role in quick project completion. Now, to talk about the agile model, the meaning of agile is basically swift or versatile. So if we go by the literal meaning, it is basically swift or versatile. An agile process model, it refers to a software development approach which is based on iterative development. Now, we have already talked about iterative development, and basically iterative development, it deals with smaller modules, or it breaks down the entire task into smaller iterations or parts which do not directly involve long-term planning. So only short-term planning is involved for each of the iterations, and these iterations are handled in a separate manner. The project scopes and requirements are laid down at the beginning of the development process, and the plans regarding the number of iterations, the durations, and the scope of each iteration are clearly defined in advance. Now, if we are considering the agile iterations or the iterations of the project, so each iteration basically is considered in as a short time frame. So iterations basically here we will be considering as a time frame, and this time frame essentially needs to be short. And how long should be these time frames? These time frames basically last from 1 to 4 weeks of time. So each iterations, which are actually called as frames, they will be completed within 1 to 4 weeks, and a division of the entire project into smaller parts will help to minimize the project risk and reduce the overall project delivery time requirements. So suppose I have a project P1. So in my iteration 1, I will divide it into several iterations as I1, I2, I3 and so on, and each of them will have a definite amount of time associated for it for completion. However, this time again is very short, and it helps the team which is working for the project to get involved in these iterations, and each of these iterations will be handled in a separate SDLC in a full-time manner by different parts of the team. So hence what happens, the risks involved also is greatly reduced. Talking about the agile model or agile development methodology, so we can consider this particular development or the phases of the model in a circular manner, because every time an iteration is created, it will be having a separate team to work with it. So if we are considering that the agile model begins with brainstorming. So it is brainstorming, and this is nothing but, we have already come across this concept. This brainstorming is actually your requirement analysis. So requirement analysis is basically performed during the brainstorming phase. After that, it is followed by the design phase. Design is basically, we are creating the design document as well as the prototype if possible. Design document and prototype. So these two things are developed in the design phase, followed by the development stage. So these steps are similar to what we have already done for a complete project in rapid application development as well as classical waterfall model. However, the model which we are discussing over here is for each of the iterations. So development is basically for iterations, demo and feedback. So iterations, demo and feedback will be taken care of here. And after that, there is another step involved here, which is quality assurance. So quality assurance, we will shortly discuss about each of the steps, which will it will be taking care of the iterations and iterations, demo and feedback as well. So these two steps would be handling all the iteration related concepts, that means the development related concepts, as well as the demonstration and the feedback associated with it. Then finally there would be deployment. Now this deployment is a common stage where the actual the project goes for a real time deployment, or it goes out to the real time environment. So here the production as well as technical support, production and technical support comes into picture. Technical support, so this comes into picture. So this is basically the agile model, where we will have different stages like brainstorming, design, development, quality assurance as well as deployment, and these 5 stages will be basically helping in order to develop any iteration. So all of these steps are common for each iteration in a particular project. Like in requirement gathering, we have to define the requirements and we have to explain the business opportunities and plan the time and effort needed to build the project. Similarly, while designing, we have to create the UML diagrams, as well as we have to show the different data flow. The development again, or the construction phase, here the actual work begins and they start working on the project with aims to deploy a working project. Quality assurance basically takes care of all the testing related activities, and the team of quality assurance, it will examine the product's performance and look for any type of bugs. Then we have deployment, And in this phase, the team issues a product for the user's work environment, and after that there is also a feedback which is associated here. So this feedback is after releasing the product. The last step is feedback, and in this the team receives feedback about the product and works through the feedback. So feedback, however, it comes right after the development, because it will be going for a demonstration to the user, and then it will also collect the essential feedback. However, one other feedback will be collected after the end of deployment, or after the deployment is over. So that the any type of changes can be easily implemented for this particular iteration. So once again, I would like to mention here is that this particular steps is common for all iterations that a project might have, and we may break down the project into several iterations and go on deploying them in an incremental manner, one after the another. Okay, now next, talking about the agile testing methods. So once the methodology is developed and once the particular product is developed, there are several testing methods that the agile model supports. So these are well defined methods and well tested methods. Some of the common ones are Scrum, the second one is Crystal, the third one is dynamic software development. We also call it as DSDM. So dynamic software development method. So this in short is known as DSDM. Then we have feature driven development. So feature driven development is here, and in short it is known as FDD. Then we have lean software development, and finally we have extreme programming. So all these steps basically pertains to the testing in which an agile model is tested for its performance. So Scrum is an agile development process which focuses primarily on ways to manage tasks in a team-based development condition. So here, if we are considering Scrum, the Scrum has three different roles. So Scrum has a Scrum Master, it has a product owner, and then it has a Scrum team. So what does the Scrum Master do? Scrum Master can set up the master team and arrange meeting and remove obstacles for the process. So Scrum Master is similar to any type of supervisor that we have in our projects. Then product owner makes the product backlog, prioritizes the delay, and is responsible for distribution of functionality on each repetition. So this will be like the team lead who will be collecting the different types of information required for the project, and it will also be analyzing and prioritizing the delay it might have, and will take responsibility of distribution of different work among the team for each work that is coming into that particular project. And there is the Scrum team. So this team will work and organize the work to complete the sprint or cycle. So this team is important when it comes to development. Product owner is important when it comes to the identification of risks and prioritizing the functionalities and distribution of the functionalities. And Scrum Master, this will be the primary person who will be setting up the entire team, then interacting with the customer, and it will also identify any obstacles in the process. Then let us talk about the extreme programming. This type of methodology is basically used when customers are constantly changing demands or requirements, or when they are not sure about the system's performance. So if there are some kind of customers who wants constant changes in their product that is about to be developed, so at that situation we have to introduce extreme agile model. Basically it introduces extreme programming. So this, with the help of this extreme programming, the developers would be able to develop a system in a very efficient manner and quickly, without any dissatisfaction related to the customer. Then talking about the crystal method, so there are three concepts of this method. Let us write it down. So the crystal method basically has chartering, cyclic delivery, and wrap up. So if we are considering the chartering, so chartering basically is they are the multi activities which are involved, such as making of a development team, performing feasibility analysis, as well as making of developing plans, etc. So those are actually the chartering activities. The next one is the cyclic delivery. So as the term suggests, it relates to two or more cycles. That means it consists of different types of cycles, which are team updates and release plan in some cycles, then integrated product which are delivered to the users. So these things are taken care of in cyclic delivery. We have a time frame associated with this particular uh, component of this method. So and the final component of crystal is wrap up. So in wrap up, according to the user environment, this phase will perform deployment and post deployment. So if we are considering the crystal method of testing, we will have the entire iteration steps. That means from the brainstorming session to development of a team, or creation of a developing team, as well as the scheduling and other such time related activities, as well as the deployment related activities, all will be under this particular testing method. Then we will talk about DSDM, which is dynamic software development method, and this is a rapid application development strategy which we have already discussed for software development, and it gives an agile project distribution structure. So in DSDM we use different methods like time boxing, then we have Moscow rules, and we also have prototyping. So these three different, we have already talked about time boxing in our previous video. So basically, if we are considering a time box type of an environment, or if we are considering the time of completion of an iteration, that we basically consider it as the time box of that particular project, and it refers to the maximum amount of time which is needed to deliver an iteration to the customers. So suppose a project will need 20 hours to develop, so we will basically consider the deployment as well as other testing time also associated with it, and finally we will consider around 30 to 35 hours as the time box for that particular project. So actual development, it might take around 20 hours, but cumulatively after the product is finally developed to the deployment stage, that means to the delivery to the customers, we will be considering it as in one time box. And there is always an end date to this particular time box, or the time box of an iteration. Okay, we also have Moscow rules, in which we will be considering the must have, should have, could have, and won't have strategies, or won't have requirements, which we will be using to prioritize the requirements in any project. Okay, so basically it is a four-step approach to prioritizing which project requirements will be providing the best return on investment. So we have to remember this Moscow rules as must have, should have, could have, and won't have this time rules, and they are extremely important when it comes to agile processes, because it helps in the time management of prioritization of different requirements, and also deploying those kind of requirements in the real-time environment. Okay, and the third one is the prototyping. So basically here we will be developing a small prototype out of it, out of the different types of requirements which we have generated, and based on the prototype which is developed, it will be going for testing phase, and we can go ahead with the DSDM testing method for that. Now this DSDM project, basically it consists of 7 different stages. We have pre-project stage, then we have feasibility study, business study, functional model iteration, design and build iteration, implementation, and post project. So these are some of the stages which are related to DSDM method, which comes under the Agile SDLC. We will not discuss them in details. That will be discussed in a separate video which will focus only on DSDM primarily. However, for us to understand that these are the 3 different components which takes care of the DSDM method, that is time boxing, Moscow rules, and prototyping. Now talking about feature driven development, or FDD. So feature driven development, basically it focuses on designing and building of the features. Every project will be designated or will have certain amount of features and certain amount of functionalities related to that particular project. For example, if I take a banking software, that particular software will be having a separate module which will be providing the users with loan facilities. There will be a banking module in which the customer would be able to deposit and withdraw or to make transfer of money from his account to some other accounts. There might be some other features for the admin which will be facilitating the admin to provide different types of offers to the customers. So all these kind of features, they need to be designed first before it goes for the prototyping stage. So in contrast to other smart methods, this FDD will be describing the small steps of work which could be obtained separately per function. So this designing and building would be taken care of on a function to function basis. Okay, so whenever we have a project, initially we will divide that project into smaller iterations, and per iterations the different types of functions are identified, and once the functions are identified, the features pertaining to those functions would be designed and built in this feature driven development approach. Then we have lean software development. So if we are considering the lean software development approach, so here it follows the principle of just in time production. So just in time production. So this principle is followed in this particular approach, and this indicates the increasing speed of software development and reducing costs. This it also focuses on elimination of wastes, eliminating waste. Then it will amplify learning, and it will also defer commitment and early delivery, as well as empowerment of the team and building integrity, and optimize the whole product as a better product, or optimize the whole development process of that particular product. So this lean software development is a tough contender when it comes to extreme programming. However, along with the extreme programming facilities, lean software development also focuses on learning and utilization or exemption of the wastes. Now, one of the primary concerns is, when do we use this model? When do we use agile model? So this question is a very common question when it comes to choosing of the agile model. So we have to keep in mind 4 different points when we are considering the utility or the choice of agile model over other models. First of all, if the project size is small, we can go ahead with the agile development. So project size is small. So this is one criteria. Along with this criteria, if frequent changes are there, so it is capable of handling change request, and if there are frequent changes in the customer's requirements, we can make use of this agile model. And also, if the customer is ready to have a meeting with the software team all the time, so if there is frequent customer interaction, then also we can go ahead with the agile model. So frequent customer interaction is also one criteria when we can go ahead with this model. So frequent customer interaction, and if we have a very strong team or a very skilled team, skilled and experienced team, because in order to handle the change request at different point, we have to have developers, or we have to have team members which can actually identify whether the change request is possible at that instant of time, and where actually do we have to incorporate that change request. So all these 4 points would be directing when we can use the agile model for development. Some of the advantages when it comes to agile model, as we have already been discussing a lot about it. So first of all, it is frequent in their delivery, then it has constant, or it has continuous communication with the client, because after every iteration it goes for a feedback. So constant communication with client is another important advantage related to this particular method. Then it has efficient designs, because since there are skilled workers in the team for an agile model or agile development, essentially the designs after brainstorming sessions would be much more accurate when it comes to business requirement. So efficient design is there, and change requests are handled effectively, and it reduces the total development time. So these are some of the advantages. Now moving ahead with the disadvantages. So with this model we have a few disadvantages as well. So this disadvantages, first of all, due to the shortage of formal documents, it creates confusion. So there is confusion, and crucial decisions are taken throughout various phases they can be misinterpreted. So confusion and misinterpretation is one problem which is associated with this model, because there are different team workers working at different iterations, and because there are not many formal documentations available and the changes are handled then and there whenever it comes. So there might be a chance that there might be confusion and misinterpretations of the decisions taken. And the second one is due to lack of proper documentation. Again, once the project completes, the developers are allotted to another project, and maintenance of the finished product can become difficult. So maintenance is difficult, because whichever worker is working in one particular project, once that particular iteration is over, he is allotted to some other project, and the previous iteration or the previous frame becomes difficult to maintain in the absence of that particular team or that particular worker. So these are the advantages and disadvantages related to the agile model. We have seen how it works and when we can handle it, as well as we have also talked about the agile testing methods in detail, and we also saw the agile model for each iteration, and we have also discussed about the different attributes or the different components of the agile model. So that is all for this video. We will talk more about software development lifecycle models in our next session. Thank you.